Emma Davis wiped her tired hands on her worn apron as she glanced at the clock behind the bar. It was well past midnight. The Velvet Pines Hotel, a modest and aging building nestled in a struggling corner of the Bronx, was quiet except for the steady patter of rain against the cracked windows. The scent of stale coffee mingled with the faint smell of damp carpet in the lobby. Emma had been working the late shift as a waitress here for nearly 3 years now. Between juggling tables, folding linens, and running errands, she often felt invisible, just another face in the background of the neighborhood's daily grind. But she didn't mind. The money helped to put food on the table for her mother, and the steady hours gave her a rhythm to hold on to. That night, the rain came down harder than usual. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and the street outside shimmered with pools of water reflecting the dim, flickering street lamps. Emma was about to close the small service window behind the front desk when something caught her eye. Outside, near the cracked sidewalk and the hotel's faded entrance sign, a figure lay slumped. At first, she thought he might be homeless or someone seeking shelter from the storm, but as she looked closer, her heart skipped a beat. The man was dressed in a finely tailored coat, soaked through with rain, his expensive leather shoes sinking slightly into the puddles beneath him. He was slumped face first against the curb, unmoving, and his hair plastered to his forehead. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Then she noticed 2 men standing a few feet away. Their hooded jackets were pulled low over their faces, and they cast dark, lingering glances toward the fallen figure. They began to cross the street slowly and deliberately, their steps heavy and purposeful. Without hesitation, Emma grabbed her raincoat and darted out the door into the downpour. The cold rain soaked through her clothes as she splashed toward the man, ignoring the uneasy tightening in her chest. Something told her she couldn't leave him there. "Sir, hey," she called softly, kneeling beside him. His face was pale, and he groaned quietly, barely conscious. She saw a luxury watch on his wrist and a wallet that had slipped from his pocket onto the wet pavement. The 2 men were now just steps away, their faces still shadowed, but their intentions unmistakably unfriendly. "No," Emma whispered fiercely to herself, "not tonight." Summoning every ounce of strength, she hooked her arms under the man's shoulders and struggled to lift him. His body was heavy, limp with exhaustion or worse, but she refused to let him fall back into the cold rain. Dragging him carefully, Emma made her way back inside the hotel, the door closing behind her just as the 2 strangers reached the entrance. The hum of the old fluorescent lights above did little to warm the chill in the air. She eased the man onto a battered bench near the laundry room. His breath was uneven, heavy with the sharp scent of whiskey. Emma reached into his wallet to find identification, her fingers trembling slightly. "Charles Harding," she read aloud, blinking in disbelief. The name was familiar, though she couldn't place it immediately. A quick search on her phone confirmed what she suspected. Charles Harding was a billionaire, a hotel magnate known for owning several luxury properties across the country. Emma's heart pounded. How had someone like him ended up here, so vulnerable and alone? Wasting no time, she called a trusted taxi company she had used before and ordered a cab. When it arrived, she pulled a $50 bill from her own wallet and pressed it into the driver's hand before he could say a word. "Don't charge him," Emma said firmly. "Just get him home." The driver raised an eyebrow but nodded. Gently, Emma helped Charles into the back seat of the cab. His body leaned heavily against her as she buckled his seatbelt. "You good people," he mumbled through the haze. "Don't forget, you're the kind that matters." Emma didn't answer. She simply closed the door and watched the taxi disappear into the rainy night, its red taillights glowing like a promise fading into the mist. Standing alone in this hotel lobby, soaked to the bone, Emma felt the weight of the moment settle around her. Outside, the storm was beginning to break, and in the distance, the first fragile light of dawn crept across the sky. She pulled off her rain-soaked hoodie and wrung out the sleeves, her mind swirling with questions and a strange sense of hope. Maybe tonight wasn't just any night after all. If you believe kindness changes lives and heroes come in unexpected forms, please like, subscribe, and share this story. Leave a comment about a time someone's small act of kindness touched your heart. Exactly 1 week after that rainy night when Emma Davis had pulled Charles Harding from the brink, the lobby of the Velvet Pines Hotel was buzzing with an energy Emma hadn't felt in years. She stood behind the worn front desk, smoothing out her uniform and stealing glances at the entrance. When the door chimed sharply, she looked up. And there he was, Charles Harding. Gone was the disheveled, vulnerable man she'd rescued. Now he stood tall and commanding, dressed in a tailored navy suit, his silver hair neatly combed back. His eyes held a sharp intelligence and something else, an unspoken respect. The hotel staff and a few lingering guests fell silent, sensing the gravity of the moment. "Emma Davis," Charles said, his voice calm but filled with purpose. "I owe you more than a simple thank you." Emma blinked, unsure how to respond. She was used to being overlooked, ignored, or treated like invisible staff. To hear her name spoken so directly by a man of such stature felt surreal. But what came next stunned her even more. "I want to offer you ownership of the Velvet Pines." For a moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. Emma's mind reeled. Ownership? Of the hotel she'd served at for years, scraping by on meager wages, while others above her seemed to turn a blind eye to the decay and neglect. She swallowed hard. I don't understand. Why me? I'm just the waitress. I don't have the experience or the money to run a place like this." Charles gave a small, knowing smile. "I've been watching Emma, quietly from a distance." He pulled a slim leather folder from his briefcase and set it on the desk. "The Velvet Pines has been mismanaged for years. Financial chaos disguised by fake invoices, shell companies, vendors who don't exist." Emma's stomach tightened. She'd noticed odd things before, missing supplies, strange charges, budget cuts, but she never imagined the extent of it. "I was ready to sell, liquidate the property," Charles continued. "But when I saw how you care for this place, how you care for the people in it, I realized the hotel is worth more than its debts." The words hung in the air, heavy with possibility. But Emma knew better than to trust promises so easily. Years of hard work had taught her that kindness and effort often went unnoticed or were taken advantage of. She had faced endless doubt, from managers who ignored her, coworkers who whispered behind her back, and guests who barely acknowledged her presence. Some even doubted she was capable of more than folding napkins and clearing tables. At the break room, Maria, the housekeeper, exchanged a wary glance with James, the front desk clerk. "Do you really think she can handle it?" Maria whispered. James shrugged. "She's good at what she does, but running a hotel? That's a different story." Emma overheard the murmurs and felt a familiar ache. The weight of judgment was almost as heavy as the financial burden she was about to inherit. Still, Charles was patient. "I know the path ahead won't be easy. You'll face challenges, inside and outside these walls." He looked at Emma with steady eyes. "But I believe in your honesty, your strength, and your refusal to give up." Emma swallowed her doubts. She had spent so many years invisible, her talents and heart overlooked. But this offer felt like a lifeline. Yet the real battle was only beginning. She was stepping into a broken business tangled in deceit and corruption. And she would need every ounce of courage to rebuild, to earn the trust of those who doubted her, and to face the shadows lurking just beyond the hotel's faded walls. Emma sat at the small, cluttered desk in the back office of the Velvet Pines Hotel, the leather folder Charles Harding had handed her still open before her. The official papers confirmed what she had suspected. She was now the owner of the hotel. But with ownership came responsibility far heavier than she had imagined. Her eyes scanned the ledgers and invoices, the numbers and names blurring together. At first glance, it looked like a disaster. The books were a mess, fake vendors, inflated bills, payments made to companies that didn't exist. She ran her hands through her hair, heart pounding. This wasn't just mismanagement. It smelled of something darker, money laundering, corruption, greed cloaked in a veneer of hospitality. But Emma was not one to back down. She called Maria into the office, a woman who had worked as the hotel's housekeeper for over a decade, her steady presence a beacon of support in the chaotic world of hospitality. "Maria, I need your help," Emma said softly. "This place, it's worse than I thought." Maria nodded without hesitation. "We'll get through it, Emma, one step at a time." Next, she spoke with James, the front desk clerk, who despite his quiet nature had a sharp eye and deep loyalty to the hotel. Together, the three of them began the long, grueling task of cleaning house. Emma set up a system to digitize records, sorting through paper after paper, invoice after invoice. Every vendor listed was investigated. Some were genuine suppliers, local businesses that had served the hotel faithfully for years. Others were ghost companies, empty names that siphoned money away to unseen pockets. Emma's determination became their anchor. When the boiler broke down in the middle of winter, threatening the comfort of guests, Emma refused to accept excuses. She stayed late coordinating repairs herself. When shipments failed to arrive, she called suppliers repeatedly until the problem was resolved. But as the hotel slowly began to show signs of life, dark clouds gathered outside. One evening, a fire inspector arrived unannounced. His tone was polite, but his citations were severe. Fire extinguishers not up to code, blocked emergency exits. Emma knew the inspections were a form of intimidation, a way to pressure her into giving up. Not long after, the walk-in freezer malfunctioned, spoiling hundreds of dollars worth of food. Then came the anonymous letters, thinly veiled threats warning her to stop digging into the hotel's finances. Despite the mounting pressure, Emma stood firm. She leaned on the support of Maria and James, and together they met every challenge head-on. Local residents began to notice the changes. The air in the lobby felt different, cleaner, lighter. The creaking floors were patched and fresh paint covered the scuffs. Word spread that the hotel was no longer a place to avoid but a place to visit. Small businesses on the block dropped off flyers asking to partner. Guests who had once skipped the Velvet Pines began to book rooms, curious about the quiet transformation. But not everyone was pleased. A figure from the hotel's murky past began to cast a long shadow. Vincent Kane, an elusive man connected to the financial schemes Emma had uncovered, made his presence known. He appeared suddenly in the lobby one night, impeccably dressed, his smile cold and calculating. "Miss Davis," he said smoothly, "you're stirring up things better left alone." Emma met his gaze steadily. "I'm here to fix this place." Vincent's smile tightened. "Be careful. Some shadows don't like the light." His warning was chilling but failed to shake her resolve. Emma knew the road ahead would be rough, but with every late night spent poring over documents, every conversation with vendors, every small victory in restoring the hotel's reputation, she grew stronger. The Velvet Pines was no longer just a building. It was a symbol, a testament to resilience, honesty, and the quiet power of steadfast kindness in the face of greed. Emma Davis sat in a small, quiet diner on the outskirts of the Bronx, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup of black coffee. Across from her sat Sarah Monroe, an investigative journalist from the local paper, eyes sharp and attentive. Emma had reached out to Sarah weeks ago, driven by a growing conviction that the corruption she'd uncovered at the Velvet Pines Hotel ran deeper than anyone had imagined. Now, with mountains of documents, ledgers, and detailed records in hand, they were preparing to bring the story to light. "This is bigger than just the hotel, isn't it?" Sarah said softly, flipping through the files. "The money laundering, the fake vendors, it's a network linked to some powerful people." Emma nodded. "Vincent Kane and the old management, this isn't just a scam, it's an entire system built to siphon millions." The stakes were high. Emma knew the risks, retaliation, threats, even legal battles. But she refused to let fear silence her. Back at the Velvet Pines, the atmosphere had shifted. The sabotage, the broken equipment, the surprise inspections, all seemed to stop, as if the shadows that had lurked in the background were retreating. But Vincent Kane's presence was still felt, his words a warning whispered in the halls and through the thin walls. Emma, however, had found an unexpected strength. Supported by Maria, James, and the growing community around the hotel, she was no longer alone in this fight. Then, one crisp morning, Sarah's article hit the stands. The headline blared across newspapers and online portals. "Local hotel owner uncovers multi-million-dollar fraud ring, a story of courage and justice." The exposé detailed the fraudulent schemes, the shell companies, the layers of deceit woven through the hospitality industry. It named names and connected dots that no one else dared to touch. The public response was overwhelming. Calls of support flooded the hotel's front desk. Local businesses rallied to help, offering services at discounted rates or donating supplies, and the police began investigating, following the trail Emma and Sarah had uncovered. Vincent Kane's threats grew quieter, his power waning as the light shone brighter on his crimes. A week later, Charles Harding returned. Emma met him in the lobby where a small gathering had assembled in quiet anticipation. Charles handed Emma a sealed envelope. Inside were the final legal documents, the deed to the Velvet Pines Hotel, the land, the property, all transferred to her name without strings or conditions. "I trust you'll continue the work you've started," Charles said, his voice sincere. This place belongs to you now." Emma's eyes glistened with tears, not of sadness but of hope. She unfolded a new sign, its bronze letters gleaming, the Lantern House. A symbol of light in the darkness, a beacon of safety, community, and belonging. The hotel was no longer just a building to stay in. It was a home. That evening, the Lantern House hosted its first community gathering. The grand lobby, once dim and silent, now buzzed with life. Soft jazz floated through the air, mingling with the sound of laughter and conversation. Families, neighbors, local musicians, and friends filled the space, sharing food donated by nearby restaurants and stories of survival and resilience. Emma watched as children chased each other between tables, their faces alight with joy. Maria stood by the entrance, her smile radiant as she welcomed guests. James talked animatedly with a group of retired postal workers. Emma stepped up to the small stage near the fireplace, her heart pounding. "I don't have a long speech," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "But I want to thank every one of you for believing, for standing with me, for helping us build something new." She paused, looking around at the faces, some familiar, some new, all shining with hope. This hotel is more than a place to sleep. It's a lantern in the night, a place where everyone is seen, valued, and welcomed. The applause that followed was warm and sincere. In that moment, Emma was no longer just a waitress or an owner. She was a guardian of light, a symbol of what kindness, courage, and community could create. Emma Davis sat in a small, quiet diner on the outskirts of the Bronx, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup of black coffee. Across from her sat Sarah Monroe, an investigative journalist from the local paper, eyes sharp and attentive. Emma had reached out to Sarah weeks ago, driven by a growing conviction that the corruption she'd uncovered at the Velvet Pines Hotel ran deeper than anyone had imagined. Now, with mountains of documents, ledgers, and detailed records in hand, they were preparing to bring the story to light. "This is bigger than just the hotel, isn't it?" Sarah said softly, flipping through the files. "The money laundering, the fake vendors, it's a network linked to some powerful people." Emma nodded. "Vincent Kane and the old management, this isn't just a scam, it's an entire system built to siphon millions." The stakes were high. Emma knew the risks, retaliation, threats, even legal battles. But she refused to let fear silence her. Back at the Velvet Pines, the atmosphere had shifted. The sabotage, the broken equipment, the surprise inspections, all seemed to stop, as if the shadows that had lurked in the background were retreating. But Vincent Kane's presence was still felt, his words a warning whispered in the halls and through the thin walls. Emma, however, had found an unexpected strength. Supported by Maria, James, and the growing community around the hotel, she was no longer alone in this fight. The night before the article was set to publish, Emma sat alone in the hotel's small office. She looked out at the quiet street illuminated by a flickering street lamp and thought of how far the hotel had come, and how far she had come herself. From a waitress quietly keeping the place afloat to a woman standing firm against powerful forces trying to crush her spirit. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah. "Tomorrow changes everything. Stay strong." The next morning, Sarah's article hit the stands. The headline blared across newspapers and online portals. "Local hotel owner uncovers multi-million-dollar fraud ring. A story of courage and justice." The exposé detailed the fraudulent schemes, the shell companies, the layers of deceit woven through the hospitality industry. It named names and connected dots that no one else dared to touch. The public response was overwhelming. Calls of support flooded the hotel's front desk. Local businesses rallied to help, offering services at discounted rates or donating supplies. And the police began investigating, following the trail Emma and Sarah had uncovered. Vincent Kane's threats grew quieter, his power waning as the light shone brighter on his crimes. One afternoon, a police detective stopped by the hotel. He shook Emma's hand firmly and told her the case was progressing swiftly thanks to the evidence she and Sarah had provided. Meanwhile, the hotel was transforming before everyone's eyes. Where once there had been suspicion and neglect, now there was hope and renewal. Charles Harding, who had watched Emma's journey from afar, returned quietly one afternoon. He didn't bring a crowd or cameras, just a simple envelope. Emma met him in the lobby, surrounded by a few of the hotel staff and community members who had gathered to witness this quiet ceremony. Charles handed Emma the envelope. Inside were the final legal documents. The deed to the Velvet Pines Hotel, the land, the property, all transferred to her name without strings or conditions. "I trust you'll continue the work you've started," Charles said, his voice sincere. "This place belongs to you now." Emma's eyes glistened with tears, not of sadness but of hope and gratitude. She unfolded a new sign, its bronze letters gleaming, the Lantern House, a symbol of light in the darkness, a beacon of safety, community, and belonging. That evening, the Lantern House hosted its first community gathering. The grand lobby, once dim and silent, now buzzed with life. Soft jazz floated through the air, mingling with the sound of laughter and conversation. Families, neighbors, local musicians, and friends filled the space, sharing food donated by nearby restaurants and stories of survival and resilience. Emma watched as children chased each other between tables, their faces alight with joy. Maria stood by the entrance, her smile radiant as she welcomed guests. James talked animatedly with a group of retired postal workers. Emma stepped up to the small stage near the fireplace, her heart pounding but her voice steady. "I don't have a long speech," she began, her voice filled with emotion. "But I want to thank every one of you for believing, for standing with me, for helping us build something new." She paused, looking around at the faces, some familiar, some new, all shining with hope. "This hotel is more than a place to sleep. It's a lantern in the night, a place where everyone is seen, valued, and welcomed." The applause that followed was warm and sincere. Later that night, Emma walked through the empty halls of the Lantern House. The soft glow of the new lamps cast gentle shadows on freshly painted walls. She paused by a window overlooking the city skyline, the Bronx lights twinkling like stars. For the first time in a long while, she felt peace, not just from the safety of the building around her, but from the strength she had found within herself. The battle was far from over, but Emma knew that light, no matter how small, could never be fully extinguished. And sometimes, it only took one person willing to stand in the darkness to ignite a beacon for many. The Bronx skyline stretched out before Emma Davis as she sat quietly by the tall window of her office at the Lantern House. The fading dusk painted the city in shades of orange and purple, the first stars beginning to shimmer faintly above the rooftops. The gentle hum of the neighborhood, distant car horns, and the soft murmur of evening life below blended into a comforting symphony. Emma allowed herself a moment of stillness. The journey that had brought her here, from a late-night act of kindness pulling a stranger to safety to standing firm against threats and corruption, felt surreal. She was no longer just a waitress working the night shift. She was a leader, a guardian of this community's heart and spirit. Her gaze rested on the bronze letters gleaming on the sign outside, the Lantern House, a symbol not only of the building she now owned, but of the hope and resilience that had been kindled within its walls. Her thoughts drifted to the people who had supported her, Maria and James, who never wavered in their loyalty, Sarah Monroe, the fearless journalist who helped expose the truth, the neighbors who believed in her vision. Each of them had become a thread in the tapestry she was weaving, a community bound by trust, respect, and shared dreams. Emma's plans stretched far beyond running a hotel. She envisioned the Lantern House as a sanctuary for those seeking more than just a room. She dreamed of scholarships to help local kids pursue their education, after-school programs where children could explore music, art, and literature in a safe space, and community gatherings where stories of survival and hope would be shared. She had already started conversations with local schools and nonprofits, and the support had been overwhelming. It wasn't just about rebuilding a business, it was about rebuilding lives. Her phone buzzed softly, breaking her reverie. Emma glanced at the screen and saw a message that made her pause. A black envelope had arrived that afternoon, slipped under the front door of the hotel. No return address, just her name, written carefully in silver ink. Inside was a single-typed sheet of paper with a message that was polite, yet chilling. "You may think you've won, but don't mistake attention for protection. Some debts don't disappear, they wait. Stay vigilant." Emma folded the note carefully and placed it beside her. A quiet warning from a shadow connected to Vincent Kane's lingering influence. For a moment, a flicker of unease passed through her, but it was replaced quickly by a deep calm. She wasn't alone anymore, not with her team, the community, and allies like Sarah at her side. Without hesitation, she picked up her phone and called Sarah. "Hey, it's Emma," she said when Sarah answered. "Someone wants us to know the fight's not over, but neither am I." Sarah's voice was steady, filled with determination. "We'll keep shining the light, together." Emma smiled softly. Together. Later that evening, Emma stepped outside onto the hotel's front porch. The night was cool and clear. She looked up at the glowing sign of the Lantern House, its soft light steady and unwavering. The lantern burned quietly, a beacon for those weary of darkness, a promise of second chances, a testament to kindness. Emma thought about how far she had come and how one small act of courage and compassion could ripple out, changing more lives than she had ever imagined. Her eyes softened as she spoke softly to herself and to anyone listening. Sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness light the darkest paths. Who will you choose to see today? As the lantern's glow mingled with the city lights, Emma Davis knew the story was far from over, but whatever tomorrow brought, she was ready. She thought about the journey, how one simple choice to reach out and help a stranger on a rainy night had transformed her life in ways she never expected. It wasn't just about owning a building or fighting corruption. It was about reclaiming dignity and hope for herself and her community. Emma understood now more than ever that kindness was a quiet revolution. It didn't announce itself with grand gestures or headlines. Often it lived in the small moments, the gentle touch of a hand, a listening ear, or the courage to stand when everyone else turns away. She looked out across the street, watching neighbors return home, couples sharing smiles, children playing under the street lamps. This was what the Lantern House was for, a safe harbor where people could be seen for who they truly were, beyond labels, beyond judgment. In a world so quick to judge and dismiss, Emma wanted this place to be a reminder that every person has value and a story worth hearing. Her phone buzzed again, a message from a local teacher volunteering to organize after-school tutoring. Another from a retired musician offering free lessons for the weekend open mic nights. These were signs that the seed she had planted was growing, nurtured by hope and collective effort. Emma smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. She wasn't alone in this fight or this dream. But she also knew that challenges would come, old shadows that refused to fade, the whispers of doubt that lingered in corners. Yet with every step forward, the light grew stronger, because kindness, once kindled, was contagious. She thought of the countless people who walked past the hotel daily, burdened by their own struggles, often unseen and unheard. If even one of them could find solace here, if one young person found a reason to believe in a better future, then every struggle would be worth it. Emma Davis reached out and touched the cool glass of the window, feeling connected to something larger than herself, a movement of light, resilience, and human dignity. She whispered to the night, "May we all find the courage to be the light someone else needs." And as the city slept under a blanket of stars, the Lantern House stood tall and steady, a beacon burning quietly but fiercely, lighting the way for all who sought refuge, hope, and a chance to start anew. Thank you so much for watching this story of courage, resilience, and hope. If this touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share. We'd love to hear your stories of kindness or times you were misunderstood. Leave a comment below. Remember, every one of us has the power to be a light in someone's darkness.